My name is Alexey. I'm a young photographer from Russia, and I would like to talk to you about portraits and portrait making in a hiding photographer. Because personally, I think the subject must be ignorant of the photographer and be comfortable in front of the camera without stress, shame, or any other constriction. To take a portrait is to have an insight into a person's personality, art of moving and behaving when not aware of others. The surroundings usually play a critical role, since it is in our intimate environments that we show our true self. The self that is not constricted or bound by social laws. To take photographs is essentially an act of non-intervention. The photographer's job is to observe and capture, or observe and recreate the event. The involvement in the actual act of the subject does not take place. In 1838, Louis Daguerre exposed a chemically treated metal plate to show Boulevard du Temple in Paris. And because of the long exposure, moving objects were not shown, and two subjects stood long enough at the lower left of the image to be singled out in this image. It appears as a man is having his shoes polished, and we gain an insight into the life of the person, and as this is the first image of a person, this is the first portrait. In the era of the daguerreotype, photographers were using a very technical camera, and a consequence of this was that the image had to be planned in a certain way to capture the essence of the subject. High observation skills were required from the photographer to see what the subject did not see for themselves. Irving Penn has tried new ways or different ways to position a subject, as placing them in a corner or making them lie down to take a portrait of them. And it was a very new and experimental way of doing things, because what happens to the subject when actually placed in a corner? As we can see of the portrait of Marcel Duchamp, he seems to have a certain easiness about him in this corner. And is it normal? Is it just because he's standing there? I don't think so. It's because maybe in our daily life we are used to stand in places, leaning against things, or lying down, that when placed in front of a camera, we feel comfortable. And that truly can be the essence of portrait making. Rinika Dijkstra recently exhibited a project called The Crazy House, where she wanted to see if you could make a portrait of someone by observing if the subject would reveal themselves just by dancing. And she actually built a studio in the club to see if the subject would feel more comfortable in the known surroundings. The music played a critical role, since it is the known surroundings that made the subjects move around and feel comfortable and completely forget the presence of the camera or the photographer. Approach to portraiture that is also quite interesting, as we see here. And a portrait in its simplest form is a story, and Helmut Newton told stories very well in his portraits by following a simple rule that everything can be a portrait. Every single detail counts as long as it relates to the subject. He described that in the industry there are the so-called models and real people. And the models are not real people because we pay them an amount of money to make them into whatever we want. Whereas the person, the real person, has already its own beautiful personality, and the tricky part is to see it and to capture it on film, on digital camera. In Stephen Shore's Micromatic series, he has actually used a camera that's shaped as a Mickey Mouse, and he wanted to explore the nature of picture taking, which is a pure snapshot in its simplest form. And by using a camera this shape, it is possible to get a very simple and quick reaction from the subject. Why go through a high psychological process when you can simply make someone laugh in front of the camera? As we can see in the first image. And there are also images of the objects that belong to the person that add to the portrait. Just last week, I've asked the Pechakucha team to ask all of you and the general public to submit via Facebook and Twitter the images that they would like to delete most. And we have had a range of submissions sent to us, and they have surely surprised me in many different ways. We have an overview here. And the reason for these images to be deleted would be bad cropping, bad lighting, or rough overall image quality. And some of these arguments are particularly the techniques used by professional photographers these days to enhance an image. Anybody can make a crisp and sharp image these days, particularly with a wide range of digital equipment. But it's exactly the opposite of creating a mood and feeling inside a photograph. If I haven't personally asked for these images, they would not exist right now. They would be either waiting to be deleted or deleted. And the real question is, can we base an extinction of an image just by this argument? If we think back to the image Mr. Daguerre took in 1838, if he had used the exact same arguments for his image, we would be looking at something entirely different right now. I would like to conclude that a portrait can be very different. Its very meaning is diversity, individualism, and private point of view. It is grammar, and more importantly, ethics of seeing. Thank you very much.